Way up there. Opening shot with Aaron from Knox there. Right, most frequently asked question of the last week. 172 questions to be exact. Along the lines of, Uncle Stu, I would love to know what your opinion of the new BSA Goldstar is. With a fair few people also asking me how I think it will compare with the ENFIELD twins. Now obviously that second question is the most difficult of the two to answer because, you can't swing your leg over a BSA yet and compare the two. And you can't judge build quality between the two manufacturers because there isn't currently a production model of the BSA available to look at. But the answer to the first question is easy. All motorcycles are fantastic. The only bad motorcycle is a motorcycle you can't rely on. And as far as I'm concerned, all motorcycles should be judged innocent until proven guilty in the reliability department. Which means as far as the Goldstar is concerned, it looks to me to be a wonderful bike. I really love the concept. Now, BSA, or the Birmingham Small Arms Company, was very probably the most prolific British motorcycle manufacturer in history. If I remember correctly, building almost 250,000 motorcycles for the war effort alone during World War II. Like most British bike manufacturers, their golden era occurred during the decades of the 1950s and the 1960s, with the fortunes declining throughout the 1970s until they were finally snuffed out during the 1980s. Now, I reckon it's probably about 2 years since I first heard the news that the BSA name and manufacturing rights had been bought by Mahindra of India. And the only real experience I have of Mahindra are some rather interesting four-wheel drive Jeeps that were imported into the UK in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And that's about the limit of my experience with them, although I am well aware that they are a huge concern elsewhere in the world. So as far as I'm concerned, the first thumbs up to this brand goes to the fact that it's been bought by an Indian company and not a Chinese company, as we've seen happen so many times in the past. Now, understandably, BSA are playing the same heritage game as everyone else. This Goldstar is, after all, a modern classic. So they're claiming a history going back 119 years, which in my mind is a little bit of a stretch, bearing in mind to all intents and purposes the BSA name has been dead for getting on for 40 years. Now, I'm not playing favourites here, but the only brand really that can claim a continuous history is Royal Enfield. But I'll give BSA the due, they're not playing on this too much, although it is clearly a card that they're throwing on the table. Now, BSA have claimed that this new 650cc single was designed by an Austrian company, although they're not naming names. At a guess, I would say it was Kiska, very possibly the same company that designed the Royal Enfield twin. This would make an awful lot of sense, obviously going to a renowned, well-known and experienced engine designer is going to ensure you don't get your fingers burned. And it's a strategy that has certainly paid off for Royal Enfield. In fact, there are a lot of common denominators between the two companies. BSA claim that the motorcycle itself was designed and developed in the UK. And I know that the British government have awarded a substantial amount of money to continue development and possibly manufacture of this bike and future models in the UK. Although I should add that most sources state that this Goldstar is going to be built in India. Now, this is good news because it tells me we can look forward to pretty good build quality at a reasonable price. The bike is due to go on sale in 2022 in India first, with exports to other markets in due course. Now, Mahindra are not new to making motorcycles. They did of course revive the Jawa name a few years back, a brand that certainly hasn't been exported to the UK, and to be honest I don't think it ever will. Even back in the day, Jawa's reputation on UK streets was never a good one. Now, the general consensus is that the Goldstar is going to be a rival to the Interceptor, if not the Interceptor and the Continental GT. If that's the case, it's got some big boots to fill. And if I'm honest, its success is going to be dictated by its price. Now, the first few hero shots that were taken of this bike gave me the impression that BSA were aiming for the premium market, which would suggest to me that it's going to come out price-wise a little bit above the Royal Enfields. But having watched some footage from its debut at the Motorcycle Live show, I've changed my mind. Now, the one caveat that I do have about this is that obviously the motorcycles shown at the NEC are not production models. So details and production quality may be better or worse than those models shown at the show. And that closer warts and all footage clearly shows to me that it's not a bike that's aimed at the premium market. Now, I'm not saying that as a criticism, it's a good thing because it means more people will be able to afford them, which will help to ensure the success of the brand, and I'm all for that, because it gives the likes of me and you more choice. What BSA are offering here is very possibly an even more faithful replica of its namesake than the likes of the Royal Enfield Interceptor, but with all the mod cons and a larger engine capacity. 652 cc's, 45 brake horsepower, making available 55 newton meters of torque at 4,000 revs per minute. BSA in this case have decided to go down the water-cooled route, the reasons for that being understandable, but this engine must run exceedingly hot because the radiator is huge. It does, in my opinion, mar the aesthetics of the bike from some angles. It is a bit in your face, looking like it's been borrowed from a tractor, but on first impressions that is the only criticism I have of the bike aesthetically. Everything else is very faithful to the original bike and it is drop dead gorgeous. They've managed to keep the profile of the silencers respectable, with a silhouette that's not too large, presuming that there's a catalytic converter hidden away in there somewhere. And it is nice to see a manufacturer make the effort here because most of them end up with huge silencers that just look totally out of proportion with the rest of the bike. Although I have to say the header pipe does look a bit on the chunky side. The frame has a very period look to the design and it looks like a single spine duplex to me, although I may be wrong. What is a little bit surprising is that the bike has been shod with Pirelli Phantom Sports comp tyres. A very competent and safe tyre, but I would have thought that does push the cost up a little bit, when a pair of Seats would have done the job just as well for less money. And these are fitted onto wire-spoked alloy rims. It also has a twin-pot Brembo braking system at the front with a floating disc, and a single pot Brembo at the back, again with a floating disc. Now, a lot of manufacturers do this because of the perceived brand quality of Brembo components, but in my opinion and my experience, Brembos are no better than any other competent brand. They just add unnecessary cost onto the final price of the machine, especially at this level. A centre stand appears to be an optional extra, which is a shame, and BSA have also chosen chromed mudguards rather than something more durable, which may prove to be an issue in some climates. Suspension is pretty standard, to be honest, for this style of bike. You've got 41mm telescopic forks at the front and a standard twin shock setup at the back with 5 position adjustable for preload. So on the whole, a very attractive package for an unknown price as yet, with no major surprises. But is it a Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 killer? Now, if these two bikes were cards in a game of top trumps, playing purely for specification, depending which values you chose, it could be a neck and neck race between these two bikes. On paper, the BSA has 2 more cc's than the Interceptor, but it's down on power by about 3 horsepower. But it's also very slightly lighter than the Interceptor 650, weighing in dry at 198 kilograms as opposed to the 202 kilograms of the Interceptor. Not enough to make a huge difference in my opinion, but being a single, it does win hands down with its torque figures, producing more of it a lot lower down in the rev range. But being a single, it's not going to have that civilised, silky smooth comfort and probably acceleration that people have come to expect from the Interceptor. In fact, I don't believe the BSA Goldstar is in any way intended to be a competitor to the Interceptor 650. It's aimed at a rider that wants a completely different experience. A unique experience that only a big single-cylinder motorcycle can offer. Last year, Royal Enfield axed their extremely successful 500cc bullet-derived models, leaving a huge gap in the market. And the BSA Goldstar is the bike which I believe will fill that gap. And I think this is a very clever move on BSA's part. They don't as yet have the track record and reputation that Royal Enfield has, so it would be a huge risk to attempt to go head to head with the Interceptor. The market for the modern classic big single is, however, wide open, a completely different experience from any twin, an experience that a lot of motorcyclists lust after. And I'll be honest, if BSA have got the recipe right with this bike, which it looks like they may have done, they can't lose. And in answer to multiple questions, yes, if this bike does live up to expectations, I would definitely be looking to add one to the channel's stable. So watch this space. Right, once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos. I really do appreciate your support. I would also appreciate it if you would leave a like, and if you're not a subscriber, subscribe to this channel. I will of course be back next week, so until then, if you're riding, ride safely, and I'll see you soon.